All righty, that looks good there. And wait, centered, perfect. Okay, just a minute there. Professionalism, right? Okay. Oh, I've got to change my screen name. Hey, everybody, it's Rage in the Cage. Cage Scott here. I'm here with Dennis, our friend from Brother Adam, and we're talking about beekeeping. I was on another stream a few minutes ago talking about amateur radios, and so I had my amateur radio number up there, which is good if you can have it. We'll get back in character. Dennis, how's it going tonight?
Oh, it's going good. It's nice and warm here in Alberta. We're having a Chinook, and I've actually seen some bees flying to go for their flight, their manure flight, flying
Okay.
out and dropping some manure. So
Okay.
good to see them.
Were they
They're
bumblebees or honeybees or?
honeybees. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, good. Right on. Right on.
Yeah. So
Um,
one of those facts that you just don't know about bees. They go bathroom when they're flying, so they have to
so
hold
don't
their
stand
bathroom.
under them.
Yeah, don't
So
stand under them.
does it work like a pigeon? If you get the pigeon on you, that's supposed to be good luck. Is it the same with the bee?
Well, it tells you got some bees living, so that's all good.
Here we go. Yeah, that's good news. Okay, so yeah, the title of tonight's stream is Working with a New Swarm. And we're continuing on with the information to help people get started in beekeeping for prepping. And Dennis, I'll let you take it from here.
Okay, so there's several different ways that we can have a new swarm and work with it. One of the ways that most people will be dealing with bees is through a package. And this here would be a package of bees. It comes in a box like this. Some of them are wooden boxes. This one here is a cardboard box, and it's got netting on two sides. Okay. And in here is a queen cage, which you can see right there.
Hanging down there. Yeah.
And then it's also got a feeder in here. So just so that you can see the feeder, that's what it looks like.
Okay.
And it comes with little tiny jelly balls on the inside of this feeder. They soak some special jelly balls in sugar water, and it expands the jelly balls up so that they have the sugar water contained in there. And as the bees start licking the sugar water, they can actually walk on top of the little liquid containing balls. And then as they start taking some of the liquid away, the balls give off more liquid so that there's more there for them to drink from. And so during transport, this is what they use to eat. If you end up bumping the container around and everything like that, that's fine, because the liquid's actually in a semi-solid state, and it's not going to pour all over the place. So this is called a package.
Yeah. Cool, that works. Those little balls, then they're honestly they are a self-feeding watering system, basically.
Yes.
That's great. Okay, cool.
Okay. So most people will be getting it in the package. Some people get their new swarm in in what's called a nucleus hive. So it has no openings for the bees to get out. The only opening that they have is in the very top. And then they also have, if you can see that there, they have air holes in it.
Okay.
So in the very top, and this one, I'm sorry, the screen came out of it, but they usually put a screen on top, and you can feed the bees through the screen. So they upend a bottle or a bucket with holes in it. It drips onto the screen, and then from the screen underneath, they take little drinks from it. But usually the screen is just the screen, so that you get lots of airflow through this, and it's transported to you in this box. And inside the box, they have frames, and they have this one here is got a little bit of capped honey on it, and it's got, if you look right here, that's the plastic foundation right there. Okay.
Okay, and yeah, that is actually just exactly like a hive, right?
Yeah, and it's embossed with the shape that you want the bees to be taking the cells off of. So in this case, it's actually a larger than what they would usually do. They emboss it a little bit larger, and their idea is the bigger the cell, then the bigger the baby. The bigger the baby, the bigger the bee. The bigger the bee, the more honey they're going to be bringing in. So that's why they have bigger embossed cells on there, is for larger honey production, because you have a bigger bee. In nature, the bee is actually smaller, and usually the cells are a little bit smaller in because of the smaller ones. And if you notice here, this is something that I'm doing. This is a method of making queens, and it's just not hitting my head right now. But if you look at it, it's got little teeny cups in there, and then on either side it's got honey.
Right.
Okay? So when I'm making queens, I will put a queen in here and keep it in here, and she will want to make babies. So she'll walk around inside here, and she'll put a baby in every cup. And then what I can do is I take her out after she makes all the eggs in the cups. I take her out, and then I can take each individual cup and make it into a queen. And how I do that is I suspend it. This is the top. So I suspend the cup pointed down. And it's just a little cup, and when you point it down, it tells the bees that that's a queen. So what I do when I bring home a swarm of bees is I usually split them in two, and I have a queen already on the way so that they don't freak out and think that they're without a queen. And so I put half in this little white box that I've got here and half in another white box. And that way I can split it and double my hives right away. It's a little bit risky because the queen may or may not take, and then it takes a month to make a queen. So these bees will be in here for a month doing their business, hoping that they have a queen. So yeah, that's one of the things. But I just took us off on a different tangent. But they come in the boxes or in the swarm packs. They come in nukes, or you can get them. You can attract them to your hive, and they come in as a swarm, a big ball of bees. They fly in and rest on the side of the hive, and then if they figure it's a nice hive, if there's a hole here on the side, they'll rest on the bottom of the box here. And if they decide it's nice, they'll march on in, and the queen will go in, and then you have a bunch of bees. So that's the three different ways that we're going to be dealing with this. I talked about a fourth way, and that is making your own splits. So those are the ways that we can usually get bees. When these things come, you want to get them in the hive as soon as possible. Because they've been transported. Usually the transport takes 5-6 days. If you get them sent to like your post office, they'll call you and say, "Oh, we've got some live bees here. Come and get them really quick." And so then you go and pick them up. They have been in this container, if they come to you by post, 7 days to 10 days. So they're itching to get out of this box and into your hive. So it's important that you get them home, get them in your box as soon as possible. So any questions yet?
Well, actually, it's really interesting. you had talked about the larger the frame, the larger the bees. Now, I wanted to ask you, um, does the environment or the place on Earth have anything to do with how big the bees grow? Like, you know how, like, okay, for instance, you and I are both in Alberta, and we know that in northern Alberta, the mice are smaller, but the coyotes are bigger, and in southern Alberta, it's the other way around, and it has to do with their environment and these kinds of things. It's the same species and all that, but their environment dictates. So is that the same with the bees? And it sounds
Yep.
like you can manipulate that, right?
You definitely
So
can. Okay, so this here is a frame, and you notice that it's got a plastic medium in here. And the white plastic means that it has less wax put on it from the factory. So they spray wax on here. If there's no wax on here, then the bees are less likely to like it. It smells like plastic, and that they don't really like that.
okay.
They have yellow ones. Let's see if I have a yellow one. I don't know if that's yellow or not. I can't see, but I think it might be yellow. If you look here, looks more white on there.
All right.
But the foundations they make are yellow, or they make black foundations. The yellow ones usually have more wax sprayed on them. And if you smell it when you get it initially, it has the yellow ones have kind of a burnt wax smell, if you've ever smelled it. And so what's happened is, as they're bringing in the honey, they warm up the honey to the point where it's extremely runny, and you can put it through a spray gun. And what they do is they spray it on here, but when they heat it up that high, it actually has kind of a burnt smell to it. But the bees don't care. They're happy with that. So we're usually happy with that too.
Okay.
So, but
well, that makes sense because, yeah, I mean, we talked about earlier in other streams that, they like natural things, and in nature, a lot of, like you said, a lot of places where you'll find bees in nature is burnt out logs.
Right. So,
right?
To answer your question, it's totally on the size of the foundation. So if you allow the bees to make their own foundation, so if you take this plastic thing out and you put this into the hive, maybe give them a little bit of a starter strip of wax, they will make their own size of bees. And usually if they are the bigger bees, it takes them a generation or two to get back to the smaller cell size. But if you are intending for them to be bigger bees, okay, you put in this medium into the frame, and this plastic into the frame, and then you hand it to them, and you wanna put wax on it so that they accept it and start making their comb on here, and that will tell them that this size of cell is what you want. And as far as I know, it's totally dependent on the size of this as to how big the bees will end up being. And there is a movement among the granolas to go back to, and by granolas I mean the people who want natural beekeeping. There is a movement amongst them to go back to natural bee comb size, because we have discovered that if you make a bigger bee, we have a certain parasite that can get down their throat and essentially choke the bee off. So they're called trachea mites, and they get in the bigger bees in their throats. But if you have a smaller bee, you have less problem with trachea mites because, well, they don't fit in their throats that well. So there is a movement to go to smaller cell bee size because, hey, it's great to be able to have that size of bee and not have those problems. You can buy medicine to keep trachea mites at a lower minimum, but what ends up happening when a bee gets a trachea mite is it will do its business and then start slowing down, slowing down. Pretty soon it'll discover that it's starting to get sick. And what bees do when it knows that it's sick is that female will leave the nest. The sick worker will leave the nest and fly away and just not come back.
Mm.
So
Okay.
when it
Is it
decides that
then,
it's sick, it just goes away.
okay. So
So
would
we're
it,
losing a lot of hives from tracheomites because the bees, they leave the hive and there's
yeah,
very few bees left in the hive except for the queen and some of her babies.
okay. Would this be a situation where it might be a good idea to have the two sizes so that you might, if things go well, you have the larger bees with more production. But if you have these things come in, then you still have the backup and you're still going to get honey from the smaller bees. Is that
Oh, yeah.
something that would that work?
Well, usually in our apiaries, we want to make everything standard. And one of
Okay.
the problems that beekeepers get into is they try and hedge their bets with several different types of hives, several different kinds, of this, that, and several kinds of feeding. And so what that does is it causes you to have equipment that doesn't work with this one, that works with that one, but not this one. And
Okay.
so you run yourself into a mess. So
Okay.
it's good for you as a new beekeeper to find a system that works for you and that find a system that works with your theory of beekeeping. So by that, I mean, if you're granola, if you're going back to nature, go with that theory, go with that type of equipment. If you're production beekeeper, so you're factory beekeeping, so you've got 100 plus, 1,000 plus hives, you want to go a certain way with a certain theory. If you are a hobby beekeeper, you might have a different theory and kind of lean towards the granolas. Or you might be a sideliner, which means 100 hives, or between 50 to 100 hives is considered a sideliner. If you're a sideliner, you might want to lean more towards the factory beekeeping or production beekeeping, so that if you end up getting bigger, you don't have to go back and replace, 100 of your hive bodies because you've changed your theory on things. So
Okay.
it's important to get your theory together. And yes, you would think that hedging your bets would be a better thing, but I think because we don't have lots of money and we're going to have a smaller amount of hives when we start out, it's good just to go one way and discover what you can with that one way, and then off you go. Okay.
Okay.
So let's get into what we're going to do when we have this package. Okay. And I brought this package along so that I could show you. Of course, it's got the queen cage in there. It's got the can on top. The queen cage has a wire on it that keeps it suspended up top. The bees will be grouped around the queen, keeping her fed, keeping her warm. And a lot of them will be in the feeder as well because they love to eat. So they'll be in there feeding. There's a sticker on the side that goes up and over top of here so that it reassures you that nobody's been in there messing, that the bees haven't escaped.
Okay.
And so what you do when you get your hive is your package is you inspect it first. Okay. So when you go to pick it up from whoever's selling it from you, you take a look at it. And if you take a look on the bottom of your on the bottom of your package here, you will see a few dead bees on the bottom. That's normal. Those are bees that have aged out and have died. When they take them from wherever they got them from, they just bump them into the package. So they put a funnel on the top of the package and they take their frames and they bring them over and they just bump them into the funnel and it goes down into your package, right? So
Okay.
they make sure they don't have a queen on there. And when they don't see a queen, they knock them down in, and bees, for some reason, can hold huge amounts of weight on their feet. So one bee will hang on to another bee, will hang on to another bee, and the whole entire
Just
ball of bees is hanging on essentially to one or two bees that are hanging on to
Well,
stuff. So they're really good at hanging on to them. But when they get bumped for any reason, everybody
sure.
just drops.
Okay.
So that's how they drop it into the funnel, and that's something, an understanding that you need when we install these packages is inspecting them. You'll find several bees on the bottom, and then if you want to take a look at the queen while you still got the package there, you give it a good tap like that. That'll drop all the bees to the bottom of the package, and you'll be able to take a look at your queen. If you see in there, there's usually 3 attendants and the queen, and you'll be able to see the queen because she's got the fat ass. She's and her workers will be walking around inside of there. The workers trade between worker to worker the sugar water, and then they will go and feed the queen from either transfer her sugar water from the bees from outside, or they'll give her royal jelly. And so usually during the transport, they don't usually give her royal jelly. It's usually just sugar water that they're transferring her, and that's okay for a short time. But those attendants in there, if the attendants are dead in there, you have to wonder, okay, what's going on? Is this a good package or not? If you have tons of dead bees at the bottom, like we're talking this thick of dead bees at the bottom, reject the package because it's no good. If the attendants are if you have 1 or 2 dead attendants and then 2 left over, it just means that the attendants didn't make it for one reason or another. The queen that they put in here is not the queen that they're used to. So when they go and they tap in these frames, when they're tapping in frames, they're going to several different hives and tapping in bees that are not friends. So you get a whole bunch of bees in there that have never been together. So it takes, and what they usually do is they usually give them a good spray with something that has like lemongrass oil and water. And what that does is lemongrass oil covers the scent from all of the bees, so they don't know who belongs to which hive until they're already sent, and then they start getting used to each other. Okay, so if they forget to do that, if something happens and there was a rebellion within the package here, you're going to have a whole bunch of dead bees that got stung on the bottom, and then everybody who stung also died because bees have one stinger, right? The workers have one stinger. So if they sting somebody, the person or the bee that got stung is dead, and then the stinger got dead too. So wonderful English there, I know. So they are not friends in here, and the queen that got put in here is not a friend of theirs either. It's not their original queen. It's a queen that has been bred specially for this package and is coming to you probably artificially inseminated. So that's a bag of worms as well. We'll get into that a little bit later. Artificial insemination, the queens usually don't believe that they've been bred because they haven't gone out for their flight. So a lot of them, once they get released into their new habitat, will actually act like a new queen and go out and try and get bred by local bees. And that's to your advantage too. You want some local genes in with the bees, but a lot of our package bee queens are not as strong as grown in your own hive queens. So occasionally they get replaced. So do you have any questions?
No, I'm just seeing that we've got some regular folks showing up in the chat. Bump Spike is here, and like I said, he's a beekeeper too, and towards the end we'll get him on so you two can chat back and forth. And I want to just say hi to everybody that's here. I'll go down the list real quick. All right, so where are we at here? So Ron, how you doing? And D2, Timbo, US Anon, Jen, Tish, hello. Aobomp, Patriotic Poet is here. And yeah, that's good. We got some regular folks in. And Stuart's here as well. We're talking, just like the title says, working with a new swarm. And Dennis is showing us some of the ways that bees get transported when you make your order. So there you go.
All right. So let's go through what we would do when we get our new packages. It'll be a really quick one. So when you get your new packages, of course, you're going to inspect them. And after you've decided that they're okay, then you're going to bring them home. It's a good idea to have a bottle, a spray bottle of sugar water. So in the transport sugar bottle, you're going to have 1-to-1 water and sugar. So
Okay.
half of the container will be sugar, half will be water. And you put it in, shake it up really good so that it's good and mixed. And then you're going to, when you get them to the vehicle, you're going to give them a good spray, and they will eat the sugar water right off the netting and off of each other when they got wet. And
so it's like a fresh meal, like.
Yeah, you're giving them a fresh meal really quick. And when you transport them, you want to transport them so that they have lots of air. So if you have 15, 20 of these packages, or 2 or 3, and you're putting them in the trunk for 2 or 3, just know that they're going to have a really coppery smell to them, and that's their alarm pheromone. And when you put them in the trunk, in your vehicle, you will actually start smelling them. So if you're bringing them home in a car, roll down your windows, because damn, it's a real coppery smell and kind of stinky.
Okay. So every beekeeper should have a Trans Am with tea roofs, is what you're saying.
Yeah. I like to go to pick up my bees in a truck, and I put them in the back of the truck with a cover over top of them. And I make sure that there's some good air circulation in there, so that they can get lots and lots of air. You don't want it, like if you go and pick them up and it's cold day, you don't want to have them out in the cold. You want to transport them underneath cover and check on them occasionally. And if it's cold, you might not want to spray them with the water, just because you're going to freeze them up. Right?
Freezing. Okay.
Yeah. So that's transport. When you get to your location and you have your beehive already set up, and that's something that we can talk about later on how to set up a beehive before you get your bees. But your beehive's already set up. So you've got your box, and we'll just pretend that this is our box here. Usually you'll be putting them into either a 10 frame deep, just one box, or you'll be putting them into, if you've decided to go with supers, you'll put them into a medium super with 10 frames in it. Most people don't start them off in this. This is almost too small for a whole entire 2-pound package. Okay, so you'll be having it all set up, and we're just going to pretend here that the oops. Let's see if I can undo what I just did. You're going to pretend that this area here is where you are going to be setting up your bee package. Okay, so right on the side of the hive is my lap here. Okay, you're going to be taking the box and you're going to give them one tap like that, right? Everybody's going to fall to the bottom, and you're going to inspect the package once you get home. Okay, so you're just kind of looking what's going on, looking at the things that we talked about for inspection wise. You're going to be looking for the queen and her helpers in the queen cage. You're going to just be looking to make sure that everything looks okay. You're going to take off the sticker, and a lot of times what I do is I just pop open my my knife. And every beekeeper, when you go into your apiary, you should be always carrying a knife. And I just had it here. See if I can find it. But you're going to be taking your knife and you're going to go around the sticker. And I don't know where I put my knife. So you go around the sticker, kind of cut around the sticker, and you make sure you cut so that this wire is exposed. And then you're going to take off the sticker. And so the top of it, you see that there's a can with an open thing. Don't open
Yep.
the can thing. Just leave it closed. Okay. And you're going to have that wire there. And what you're going to do then when you're ready to go is you're going to take a deep breath. Okay. So your
Okay.
PPE that you got on are gloves because you're going to need gloves. They're not going to be happy bees when they come out. So you're going to need gloves. It would be good to have a full jacket and your hood. Okay. So you're going to make sure before you do all of this that your hood is Velcroed up and there's no holes here, no holes in the net, and that you got your gloves on. Okay. So once you're ready, take a deep breath because you got to do this like the military, you know, slow is smooth, smooth is fast, right? So you're just gonna go right through this process. Okay, so you're gonna thump them down, and you're gonna check to see that most of them are down. If you need to thump them again, go ahead and give them one more thump. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna loosen this top.
Okay.
Take a deep breath. Out they come. Okay, and you set this aside. It's gonna have tons of bees on the inside, so you just kind of set it aside beside your thing. You're gonna take this out. And it's going to have your queen cage, and it's also going to have a strip on here. It's going to have some sort of a vinyl plastic strip. That vinyl plastic strip is pheromone. It has reassured the bees that they're okay, that the queen is there because they can't touch the queen and get her pheromone off of her body by licking her. So they've licked the pheromone strip. And everybody thinks that, hey, that pheromone strip, the queen's here. Everybody relax. We're all good. And so when you take your queen out, she'll have some bees on her. So you kind of just brace your elbow against here and you go like that. It'll drop all the bees off of here. You will take her and your beekeeping jacket has a pocket. You open it up, set her in there in your pocket. Okay.
Okay.
So you're keeping her warm. What they would have been doing in the first place, you put her in your pocket. Okay. And then you have all these bees in here. You have the strip. You take the strip out, shake her off over top of your hive, get the bees off the strip, set that aside. You're going to put that probably into your hive as well because you want them to be happy. And then you're going to give another tap, and then you're going to turn it over your hive and give it a good shake. Shake, 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 shake. Bees are falling out. And then there's a whole bunch of bees just hanging on to everything. Give it a tap this way, shake, shake, shake. Tap that way, shake, shake, shake. And set this beside the hive because they'll be crawling out of that all damn day. It's got the smell of your bees on there. It's got their previous pheromones. They're going to want to go back to that. If you can, you try and get out all your bees that you can afterwards, after you're all done. But then you need to take that box away because they will go back into that box.
Okay.
Most people, they stop up their hive. So that's one of the things of getting it ready. So they put a screen or they blocked it off totally. And they've stopped up their hives so that you can keep your bees in the hive for about a day, day and a half. Sometimes some people keep it in there for 3 days. I usually go for a day and a half. And that keeps the bees from leaving your hive and going back to that box should you leave the box beside. Okay. Now you've got these bees in here. And what I usually do is I usually take some of the frames out of your hive and probably about 4 of the frames out of the hive and just kind of set them beside the hive. And then I set this right in there so that it's in the hive. It can still feed them for the time that they're getting used to everything. And you just leave that in there. So that's this gone. That's this done. Pheromone strip, you're going to just set right across the top of your frames, just right over the top, and just leave it there. And then comes the time for this. There's some learning to do with this. So you will be putting this in the hive, mashed between 2 frames. So you got 2 frames here. You're going to be taking the queen, and you're going to be setting her in there like that, in between the 2 frames like that, with the way to release her pointed down. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. It's got a sugar plug on the bottom. So the sugar plug goes towards the bottom. And then you can bend the wire over top and just make sure that it's not going to go anywhere. But that's what you do. And then you set those 2 frames in the box. And careful not to squish your bees. You're going to be practicing your bees in while you're doing this. And when you set them in the box, literally, when you're putting them in, you will take the frames by the ears. So these pointy things out here are called the ears. Okay, take them by the ears, or pointy things, the things that stick out, kind of like my ears.
I'll use the technical term of pointy things.
Yeah. So you just very carefully set them down like this. If the bees are in a ball down there at the bottom and you set it on top and it doesn't want to go down, just walk away. And what'll happen is they will start getting out of the way and it'll just go down like that till it's down.
Oh, okay.
Let them do their thing. And you're going to leave the top of the hive open for a little bit because they'll be like all over the place. Everybody will be flying around. But you've got the queen in there. You've got the pheromone strip in there. Within 5 minutes, they'll go in there. You're ready to set on the top. Okay. So you got any questions so far?
No, I think you're explaining it as you go.
Okay.
So
there are several different kinds of queen cages that I've seen in my time. We have queen cages that are wooden, and they essentially drill 3 holes in the cage there.
Okay.
And then if you see here, there's a white piece of paper right here underneath the screen. That white piece of paper is protecting the sugar. And if you look right there, there's a hole. And usually that hole has a little cork plug. You can see that cork plug right there?
Kind of, yeah.
Kind of. It has a cork plug in that hole. And so you pull out the cork plug of the sugar end, and you'll see sugar down there. And what the sugar is it's a time release mechanism. The bees will start eating out the sugar at the bottom, and as soon as they get through, then they'll release the queen themselves. Okay? So that allows them to get used to the queen that is in this cage, and they won't sting the queen to death or ball her up and throw her out. So that's a release mechanism that you use to let the queen out. Now, many beekeepers, myself included, have left the cork in accidentally and had the queen in the frames for 3 days, came back and went, oh, crap. In which case, you might as well go to this end, pull it out, set it in there, let her get out herself, because you've waited the 3 days and they don't need to release her. But you pull the cork out, let the sugar do the time release thing, and away you go. So that's where they live. That's where the queen lives for the time that she's there. There is a plastic one, like the one that we saw that in the other thing there, or in the package. This one here has several. And I haven't even cleaned this one out. It's got several dead attendants in there. You can probably see, and you can see that they have started to eat out some of the sugar from the inside, and the opening has not been opened to allow them to eat it from the outside in. This particular queen showed up dead. And so I ended up talking with the person that sold me the queen, and he sent me another queen. So I've never cleaned this out. I just kind of set it aside and said, meh. So that's the queen cage there. Now, these queen cages are useful for other things. Like when you capture a queen, you should always have one of these things in your pocket there for when you're working with swarms and stuff and you see a queen and you need to isolate her, or you see two queens and you're like, one of those shouldn't be there. You pick up your queen and you pull out the cork, shove her in, or you pull the screen off a little bit, shove her in, close her up, put a little staple on there, and then you've got a queen that you can take and insert somewhere else. So you put that in your pocket and you keep it in your pocket all the time. That way you have something to do with the queen when you find it, when you find an extra queen. Now this one here is a different kind of queen cage. It's also a time release queen cage. We can snap this off and show you here. This part here is where they put the sugar. Okay. And then in here is where you put your queen in attendance on the inside. You can fill your sugar up and have it dry like that. Then you close it, get it ready, and it's got another little cap here. That cap folds over and sticks in that hole right there. And so when you go in your hive, you look around, you're looking for a bee that's not going to sting you. So the young bees, when they're really young, have a lighter color and they're really fuzzy. And those are house bees. They've been in the hive less than 2 weeks. So those are the ones that feed the queen. So you want 3 or 4 of those attendants when you're putting your own queen in here. So you'll look for the fuzzy bees and you'll be like, oh, there's a cute little one. And you grab her on the back and put her in and close that up with your finger for a second. And then you look for another one. You get all 3 or 4 of them in there. And then you look for your queen, you find your queen, you pick her up and you put her in there. And sometimes she doesn't want to go in. And so you end up kind of holding her in your hand and sticking her like that with your queen cage. And she'll walk from your hand out into the queen cage. And that's just an easy way of putting her in if you've got her in your hand. Okay. And once you do that, you fold this little cap down and into it, and then you're ready to go. And you can put a cork up here if you want to, or some mud or something up here. And then when you get to the hive that you're going to be putting them in, you scrape out the mud, and then you give it a little bit of a spray. That kind of defeats a day or two of the timing mechanism by giving it a little spray. But because it's sticky, the bees want to come and eat it, so it encourages them to let her out a little bit sooner.
Oh, okay. That's the water and sugar spray that you were talking about?
Yeah. So these are the three queen cages that they usually come in. And always keep one in your pocket so that you know where you can put a queen if you see an extra queen. So once you got that stuff in there, you've put your queen in the cage. They've all been flying around, and they go down and get into their box because they're looking for a familiar smell. So they went to the bees that have the familiar smell now that they've been in for 7 days with. And they'll go, you set your lid on the top, you walk away for 3 days because you want them to get used to their new digs. It's blocked, but not like it still has airflow going in, but it's blocked so they can't get in and out. They're in there. And what you want to do is you want to put your frames in there. And if you're starting out, more than likely you're starting out like this, no wax. That's okay, because when you put them in there, they are excited to make wax. They're just like, oh my gosh, they already have their wax built up on their plate on their stomach. And the first thing that they do when they get in there is they rip that off, chew it up, and start forming stuff on here. So if you have a beekeeping buddy that has a little bit of extra wax or comb, ask them if you can, maybe slip them a $5 or something, give you some wax. And so a lot of times they'll just hand you a piece of burr comb like this. And this burr comb has a little bit of capped honey in it. You can see right there. That's great. It's something that they really enjoy the smell of. And you'll take your burr comb and you'll just kind of rub it on there. And as you rub it on, you're getting wax on your frame here, and that's stuff that they'll be attracted to. They'll go and they'll use some of the rubbed off wax on here. They'll actually chew it off, re-chew it, and place it on the ridges of your cells so that they can make their comb. So in the spring, they are extremely happy to make comb, and you can keep them in the state of making a frame or two every 2 weeks if you want to, all the way through the season, by taking out frames, putting in new frames, and they will wax up the new frames. Most beekeepers, they just let them do their thing on the frames, and once they've got them full, then they let them go and put the rest into honey. Making wax for bees takes a lot of energy. To get 1 pound of this, they have to eat 6 pounds of honey or nectar, sugar water. So this is kind of precious stuff for the bees. So, and they want to make it in the spring, and then they want to fill it up in the fall or summer and fall. So that's what we're hoping they're going to do. So they will fill these things up. You just have to give them some time and some food. Before we close it up, though, we're going to give them some food. This thing here is a protein patty. Protein patties are 1/2 of their food. With this, they'll be able to make tons of babies. And that's what you want right off the bat with a new hive. You want to make sure that you give them lots of protein so that they're making babies for you. The bees that come from wherever they come from, a lot of them are geriatric bees. They've been at work for most of their lives. They're getting close to the end of their lives. They're going to knock off here in a little bit. You need to be replacing them. You have a short window in which you can get new bees coming in order so that your hive doesn't start on the decline and end up having no younger bees. And so that time period is around about a month. If you can't get them going within a month, your hive essentially just dwindles to nothing and dies. Okay, so the key with this is we're going to feed them sugar water. We're going to feed them that protein patty, and they're going to just take off, right? So sugar water, you can feed your bees sugar water in a lot of different ways. It depends on your method of beekeeping, your theory of beekeeping. Granolas tend not to want to feed their bees, but granola hives up here in Canada don't do too well. And the reason is our bees start waking up in April and May, and we don't get our first flowers until the end of May, 1st of June.
Right.
So our first flowers are things like dandelions and fruit trees. And so your first flowers will come out like a month later. So they are going a whole entire month without food. And if you throw a new hive into this without any food, you're going a month without babies. And what happens?
Yeah.
You lose your hive.
Yeah.
So it's very important up here in Canada, especially, to give them a protein patty, which you can purchase from your local farm stores, or you can order it through beekeeping stores. And this protein patty is very important. You can get protein patties in powder form and then make up your patty. You can make your own patty. But if you make your own patty, it's best to do it when you've got some experience, because you don't want to put something in there that they don't necessarily like, and then they're not going to eat it, right?
Okay.
You can put out a plate if it's dry outside and you're not expecting rain. You can put out a plate of flour and mix in the flour a little bit of yeast in the flour. The yeast is a protein. The flour kind of sort of is a protein, and they'll come and dive bomb into the flour and take it back to the hive. But you want this inside the hive because you're expecting temperatures that fluctuate below the +10 that they usually fly at. So you're putting your sugar water on there, you're putting your patty on there, and if you're expecting a freeze, don't be putting sugar water on. What
Okay,
you're
so
going to do
plus 10,
instead
you're
of putting
talking
sugar water
Celsius.
on, what's that?
I said plus 10, you're talking in Celsius then.
Plus 10 Celsius. Yeah, for the Americans, I think 32 is freezing. So you're going to go 10 degrees above freezing.
44.
And that's usually when the bees come out and start flying everywhere. But bees are moving around in the hive even below plus 10. So they're moving around inside the hive, and that's why it's important to have food inside the hive for them. You've put your food in there for them that'll last like 2 or 3 days until you make sure the queen is released. But you're going to want to have food inside the hive as well. If you're expecting the temperature to drop below 10, my recommendation is here in Canada, and this is just in Canada, we do something called the camp method. So you get a sheet of newspaper, you set the newspaper on top, and you make sure that the newspaper only goes over a certain way so that they can crawl up onto the newspaper from the bottom. And then you put powder or granulated sugar, just normal white sugar on the top. And then you'll take a spray gun, give it a few sprays so that it's sticky, so that they're attracted to it. And then they will munch on the sugar until it's warm enough for you to put stuff on the hive. Why that's important is because if you get water into the hive and they can't put it into the frames quick enough because they're slow or they're in a ball, you will cause your hive to mold. So you'll pull out a frame and this darn frame will have mold on it. And you'll be like, what the heck? Why am I getting mold? And your honey will have mold on it. It's because you put water or nectar on the hive, sugar water on the hive, and they couldn't eat it fast enough to keep the hive from getting too wet inside. And a wet hive have mold.
Okay.
So that's what we're going to be doing. And then 3 days later, like I said, you're going to open up the hive. You're going to pull out your queen cage. And you're going to say, okay, did she release? Look in there. See if she's moving around inside there. And if she's in there, you're just going to pop her open close to the hive, because one thing that bees that have been artificially inseminated do is they want to go get mated. So the first thing she'll do is straight up in the air and you blast your queen. So if you are going to be releasing by popping it open and putting it in, what you want to do is you want to have your lid here, and you put your lid so that it is slightly closed like this. You pop your queen cage open, and you just set it on the top there, open, close it up, and walk away. Come back in a few minutes, check to see if she's let herself out.
Okay.
So that's what you do if she hasn't released, right? And when you're putting your protein patties on, what I suggest is you stick the protein patties. Let's see if I can see this. Just right on top of the frames, just like that.
Okay.
So it's right on the top. They start eating it from the bottom up. And when you open up the hive, sometimes you'll have strips of pollen patties still stuck on the top of your frames. I just take my hive tool and give her a scrape, put it back inside the hive, and they'll munch on that forever. So, yeah, that's what we do.
Okay. I think, have you got your YouTube playing at the same time as your StreamYard? Because I'm getting an echo.
No, I don't.
Okay.
So if we got an echo, it's probably my wonderful microphone here.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to put the link into the chat so that Obamp Spike can join us. And folks, it's just for Obamp, because we've been trying to get Dennis and Obamp Spike to be able to chat with each other. And so I will put that in the chat.
Okay. And it's always great to speak with other beekeepers because one of the axioms that we always say is beekeeping is local. So everything that I do isn't necessarily going to work for somebody in Georgia. And things that people do in Texas definitely won't work up here because we've got different circumstances. And it is literally because of the ingenuity of beekeepers and them trying everything in the book to keep their bees alive. That is what has caused hobby beekeeping to flourish because we figure out ways to keep our bees alive that nobody would have ever thought about had they not been experimenting the whole entire time.
Okay, cool.
So it's great to talk to other beekeepers and find out what they've tried. You might try something that they've tried. It might work for you, it might not. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to tell a beekeeper, oh, well, what you did doesn't work. So it just doesn't work and you're a liar. Well, all beekeeping is local and you just say, okay, well, that works for you. That's great. Doesn't necessarily work for me. So
Yeah,
drive
cool.
on.
Okay. There we go. There's Obump and
How's it going,
how
guys?
you doing? Hey, good.
Good. You got a bright light over top of your head.
I'm about to turn it off. It's pretty bright, isn't it? Maybe if I
Yeah.
back up, you might be able to see me a little better.
I see the
Yeah,
light.
that works good. And
Right,
you know
right.
what? Yeah, we can still see you. We can still see and hear you when you. No, just stand back. Just yeah.
Oh, go gadget toes. Well, I unscrewed one of the bulbs.
Okay,
There we
just
go.
stand back. There you go. Yeah, we can still hear you, brother.
Right
All
on.
right,
Yeah,
I'm
I've got my headsets on, microphone right at my throat.
Okay, I'm gonna let you guys just take it for a few minutes.
All right.
Cool.
So where
Hey,
are you
Dennis.
from?
I live in Colorado. My first name is Scott. It's a pleasure to meet you, man. I always, like you were just talking about, I love talking with fellow beaks.
Yeah, it's awesome. Okay,
Absolutely.
and I'm from Alberta, Canada. So
Awesome. A little colder than Colorado.
slightly, but Colorado does get cold.
It does. Well, cold is the wrong word. More, let's see, anticlimatic, or no, not anticlimatic. You guys have a much harsher climate. You get more moisture and a longer season of snow blow.
Yeah, and in my particular area, I have an additional problem. We get something called Chinooks. And if you listen to some of the movie stars, our Chinooks are proof that the world is ending, but it's a natural phenomenon that comes through during the winter. We get southern winds coming up through Alberta, and it thaws out the southern portion so that we get snows, and then it thaws, and we can actually get +10 weather, and then next day -40. So it sucks. We lose a lot of bees because they are not able to recluster, and but
Right.
we do our best with that.
For sure. Yeah, that's nuts. I can't remember his channel, but there's that one gentleman by the name of Ian that has a huge operation in Canada.
Yeah, he's
And
up in Winnipeg,
it's really
or in Manitoba.
Winnipeg. Okay.
Yeah, and he's great.
It's really intriguing. Definitely. Well, it's really neat to see, just to explain to the people in chat, this particular individual has hundreds of colonies. And he actually takes his bees during the winter and puts them inside. That way they survive. And I bet it would make it pretty difficult with the Chinooks that you're explaining, Dennis.
Yeah.
Because if it's that warm outside and they get out in the building, I bet. But I don't know. I'm not in Canada.
What they usually do is they usually have air conditioners in the building as well. So not only do they have ventilation so that they get the CO2 out of the building, but they have air conditioners inside, really big air conditioners. And so if the temperature starts getting a little bit warm, they'll turn on the air conditioners and keep it cool and keep it at a steady -10, -20 degrees. Well, -10 is usually what they do. So it keeps the bees in cluster, and he waits for the first thaw, and he'll let he'll take his bees out and set them out, let them go for their manure flight, and off they go. So yeah, here,
Right.
like I was saying earlier today, it was +10. We had some bees out doing their flight. So I hope they get back in, because we're due for, some -10 weather. So
Definitely. Yeah, we actually had about 2 inches of fresh snow this morning here in Colorado. I live in the banana belt, if you will, the Front Range area of the Rocky Mountains.
yeah,
So it's really interesting. During the nighttime, the temperatures plummet, and then during the daytime, it gets really hot. Today I would say it warmed up towards 40 degrees Fahrenheit,
wow,
and so that some colonies will take flight. I have 3 colonies. I've actually got one of them in my bedroom right behind me in an aquarium that if you guys have a chance, I have a video on my channel titled Nuke Rescue Disappointment, and it's a tearjerker. But I tell you what, it is a testament of the power of Jesus Christ. Really amazing. It's 12 minutes long. I think my bees are dead, and they come back to life with the queen. Not every single bee, but I have a cluster of bees right now that's probably half the size of my fist.
nice.
And I'm trying to nurse them back into health. So we'll see what I can do.
Yeah, and as a hobby beekeeper, you have a lot more time and energy to put into nursing those bees back to health, and doing whatever
Correct.
you can to keep those bees alive, right? And so
Absolutely.
the production beekeeper, the people that have 1,000+ hives, like our friend over there in Manitoba, he doesn't have the time for every single beehive. Essentially, he just says, okay, if it doesn't meet these qualifications, we're cutting this one, taking their losses in the fall.
That's right.
And away they go, right? So, but because
Right.
we don't have those many bees, it just breaks your heart when you see something like that. You're like, oh, I'll take care of that poor little thing.
Seriously. But so for the people in chat, you guys have to understand that Ian actually employs people to help with his bees. He is constantly 7 days a week. Go. It's nonstop.
Yeah. And he has his beekeeping is actually a side operation. His first operation is, I believe, cattle ranching and farming. So he's got this big, huge operation. And he said, hey, what can I do to make a little bit of extra money? Oh, let's do bees. He started out doing bees, and now he is doing conferences in Canada about beekeeping, and it's really great to see him doing his stuff. I've used him as one of my video mentors, and you notice he talked a little bit about having 3 nukes set beside each other and having them so that they are the same size as all 3 nukes, the same size as 2 queen excluders. And so that way, when he starts out in the spring, he starts with his nukes, puts the queen excluders over top, and then puts 2 regular hive bodies on top for the honey. And the queens stay in their nukes, and the rest of the bees will go up through the queen excluder, store the honey up top. And with that way, if he loses one of the hives of the 2, the workers don't just die off. They go and join another hive because it's right there and they're right beside them. So it's a really...
That's an incredible idea.
Yeah. So, and I started looking at that, and I was like, I'm a pretty ingenious guy. I can do this. So I made some nukes, and I measured them out just right. And because my nukes are from rough wood that I get from a sawmill, I had to do some measuring and changing things until I got it exactly right so that my queen excluders could go on top. And I started playing with that system.
Too cool.
It's kind of cool.
Absolutely.
We used to look at the hives that had 2 queens and essentially 2 colonies side by side. And then right in the middle, you'd set a hive body so that they shared hive bodies. And I think they call them monster hives. And so they used to do that with just 2, but putting 3 nuke size, that's just ingenious, fun. He invented
It is. That's a wonderful idea.
So, what is your theory on beekeeping? How do you keep your bees? Are you leaning more towards what we call granolas or natural ones, or are you leaning more towards your production beekeeper? Or do you want to eventually become 100 hives?
If I could have 10,000 hives, that's where I'm headed. My ultimate goal in this journey is to grow bees. I want very badly, and I'm learning so much. You know, I thirst for knowledge just like many others. I have a history in beekeeping from childhood. My father had 100 colonies when we lived in Arizona, and we traveled up and down the West Coast and deposited our bees in avocado orchards and orange orchards or groves. You know, it was a really cool thing. So I'm remembering a lot of this information that I had from childhood, and I'm doing everything I can with it right now. So
Yeah.
I will avoid treating bees with harsh chemicals, but it is necessary. And everybody that's interested in getting into beekeeping needs to comprehend that there are many biological threats to the bees concerning varroa destructor mites, wax moths, small hive beetles, and then there's the other critters, skunks and possums and bears and whatever the heck else wants to get into a colony of bees, because we're not the only ones that like the honey. And other animals like the brood. It's plumb full of protein. So these are all things that you need to account for when you're going to get into keeping bees.
Yeah. And every area is different with that too. Like up here during this podcast, video cast, I was explaining about trachea mites that we have up here in Canada. I'm not sure if you have trachea mites down there, but because
I couldn't tell you.
Because we have decided that we want our frames, our cells to be bigger. So just for those people at home, these little cells here, the etchings on here is a certain size, and we've as a group of beekeepers, all of us have decided to go with the bigger cell size. And if you have a bigger cell size, then you have a bigger larva, and it ends up becoming a bigger bee. With the bigger bee, they're hoping that it's got a bigger honey stomach. It'll bring back more honey for the production that you're doing. So because we decided to do this, we decided we wanted trachea mites, because with the bigger bee, the trachea mite can go down into the throat of the bee, and it kind of chokes off the bee, and they eventually just leave the hive and die on their own. So
Wow.
we've created our own problem, and the granolas, the natural beekeepers, are heading back towards more of the smaller cell size so that they can holistically get rid of the trachea mite, which is interesting way of doing things. And I have as I've been trying to teach people how to beekeep, I have tried out certain methods of all of the theories that I know of beekeeping. So I've tried out the granola thing, and I lean more towards that anyways, but some of the extremes that they go to, I just can't go there. And like you said, I'll treat my bee with the least strong method. And so I'll try and do it holistically first, and then I'll go to maybe some sort of plant-based thing, like using
rhubarb. Like you were talking about rhubarb for the varroa mite.
Yeah.
And all I could say is thanks for that. That's wonderful information, because I am. Let's face it. We're all natural beings. We are. There are some folks that were created with science, and that's it's an incredible thing. But the world around us is created with symbiotic relationships. So you say granola, and all I could do is agree with you. You know, I'm all for the granola methods.
Yeah.
But in a pinch, you know, it is necessary to use things like formic acid and wood bleach or oxalic acid to eradicate things like the varroa mites. And then there's other methods to get rid of the small hive beetles, which I don't believe you and I will have issues with small hive beetles. Stuart W. Right, Stuart W. down in Texas, and Tish. I'm sorry, I'm not sure I know how to pronounce your last name, Schwaysdale. You all are going to have to worry about small hive beetles because you're in a hotter climate. But there are ways to get rid of them holistically using Swiffer mop blankets, and there's some other methods using. Exactly. Yeah. You know, you can drown them. You can drown them in oil, and that's what's really neat about bees is how incredibly industrious they are. They're gonna keep other foreign insects away from the resources, and they're gonna do everything they can to try to keep them out. It's just there's always those few, just like commies. They infiltrate and they really mess things up. And you were showing the pollen patties. That's one of the #1 areas in a warmer climate that you're going to want to check for larvae from the hive beetles.
Yeah.
So it's all about staying on top of your bees. If you walk away and let them be for a couple of months, you're leaving them to nature. And
you might
if
lose
they
them.
were in the hollow of a tree, exactly. You know, if they were in the hollow of a tree, they put themselves in the hollow of that tree. But we're harvesting them and putting them in a man-made environment. So that becomes our duty as stewards of the earth to ensure that they're doing the best that they can do. So granola or acid, I'm going to take care of my bees.
Yeah. And then there's a step even further from oxalic acid. You can go and get the strips of chemicals that you set on top of the frames prophylactically. And that's what the commercial beekeepers do, is they treat them whether they need it or not. And they put in those strips, like the mite strips that they have. And the bees walk across the selective pesticide, which I can't see is good for your bees, but they walk across a selective pesticide, lick it off, and it gets rid of some of the mites, right? So
absolutely,
yeah, that's you know, you get to decide your theory on what you're going to be doing, and there are some advantages to certain things, and there's some disadvantages, right? If you're being more holistic, a lot of times you're flipping the coin, because it might work. You might have guessed what it was that was causing the illness, and it might not. You know, it's always that gamble. So
absolutely. You know, it's funny. It's funny talking about gambling. In last year, at the end of fall, kind of the middle of October, I used the formic acid strips to treat for varroa mite in my bees. And I had a weaker colony that I thought I had killed the queen using the formic acid. I got online, ordered a mated queen bee off of eBay, got the queen, and when I went to install her in that weaker colony, I'll be damned if I did not locate the queen. She wasn't dead. So I ended up making a 2-frame nuke towards the end of October in Colorado. And in my impatience, I released the queen. I didn't let them eat through the sugar. Yeah. I opened her up and dumped her in there, and they killed her.
Yeah.
They then proceeded to draw 4 cells and reared their own queen, and she's the one in my bedroom right now that survived freezing. I mean, I guess I need to make a series on my channel to show, like, I have some really incredible bees that I'm they're my zombies, and I'm trying to bring them back, and I've just got really high hopes for them. But it just illustrates how marvelous these critters are. They're
resilient.
Man,
They're
exactly.
Hey, guys.
They're so resilient.
Yeah.
We've got a really good question right now from the chat. I've got it up on the screen. Is there anything like an herb or certain flower that would keep them protected from anything that is threatening? So I think she's talking about the mites, etc. You know how you put certain flowers around your garden and deer stay away. Is there anything like that for the bees?
Yeah, sure. And we were talking a little bit earlier about symbiosis, about how animals live with insects and help each other out. One of the things that the granolas love is they like to put their beehives in one of their chicken runs, and they pick their beehives up a certain distance off the ground so that the chickens can run underneath and not jump up and start eating the bees. But and usually with that you have a hole at the top that the bees come in and out, not at the bottom, so that you alleviate yourself from the chickens eating the bees. And they usually put screen bottoms on the bottom of their hives, so then the hive beetle will drop down through onto the ground. And part of the life cycle of the hive beetle is in the ground itself. So they will go down and then they will come back up into the hive. So when they fall down and out of the hive, the chickens come along and go, nice little snack.
Munch them up.
And munch them up, and they'll keep your hive fairly well cleaned up. And it's really nice to be able to have that symbiosis between the two. Now, in this person's area, I didn't see the name there.
Tish. Tish is in Texas. Yeah, she's in Texas.
In Tish's area, there might be a plant that he can plant around his hives. But again, that's your experimentation that each beekeeper is going to be doing in his own area. Beekeeping is local. Right. What you don't want to do...
That's really important.
Yeah.
What you just said, beekeeping is local. So whatever area you are in, that's where you should concentrate trying to locate a community of beekeepers. Usually they'll come together, have monthly meetings, and the best place to start, if you're clueless, go to your fire department. Usually your fire department is going to have a list of people to call for swarms, because our firefighters don't want to be killing bees. So when they get called to a house for something like a swarm of bees, they're going to get on their call list and they're going to start calling people. Well, you can use that information to contact somebody in your area that's already into beekeeping, and they can steer you in the right direction to get with somebody local. Because if you're in Texas, you don't want to be ordering bees from North Carolina or Canada. You want to be finding bees that are acclimated to your area.
Yeah, definitely. And going back to that listener's question, there are some experiments that people have done and they were a good idea, but they didn't really think it all the way through. For example, cedar hives. Cedar is a very nice wood, and some people have made cedar hives. And the great thing about cedar is it keeps moths away. The off gas that comes off of it keeps moths away. So they were thinking, hey, this is great. We can keep the wax moths out of our hives and just build a cedar hive and it'll be great. However, the off gassing also pisses off the bees because their pheromones, they can't hear each other through their pheromone stuff. So it wrecks the communication, the chemical communication that they have. So a lot of the hives that have cedar, they abscond. They're out of there because they're like, we got to go somewhere where we can talk. So it was a good idea. They just didn't think things through all the way. They needed to experiment. And then after they experimented, then they go, oh, of course.
Yeah. So anybody who's watching that is interested, if you're familiar with flow hives, they actually have a hive body that's made out of cedar. Avoid it. And I'm speaking from experience, because what you're just talking about, last spring, I actually cut down an old growth cedar and I milled it down and I made my own frames and tried to do a swarm trap. And I know I've got a bee tree about a block from my house that there's a feral colony in.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to catch them, you know, because I know they're casting swarms. And I was really disappointed that they avoided my swarm trap. I did everything to the best of my ability. And eventually I learned exactly what you're talking about, because the cedars are full of essential oils. And bees, like you're saying, that's how they communicate, is pheromones, scent. So it's really important to have them in an environment that they're able to communicate. And if you're in an environment that's off-gassing badly, just imagine as a human, you're not going to want to hang out in a septic tank.
Nope.
It's kind of the same idea.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing that is, you can get plants and do plants to help your beehive. That marigolds tend to cause certain insects not to be around. So if a distance from your hive you're planting marigolds, they give off a certain smell that keeps away certain critters and stuff. I don't know if it helps with beekeeping or not, but the other thing you need to look at, the unsaid question in that question was, with your equipment, is there stuff with your equipment that you can keep bees away or keep pests away from your hive? This nice little thing here, this piece of plastic, they recently learned that this piece of plastic attracts wax moths. They love the plastic. They will eat the plastic. So
is it soy-based?
You're bringing in wax moths by having these things in your hives. So the granolas, once again, are freaking right. They usually put wax strips on their frames, and the bees fill out the frames the way that they want them to fill out, and they don't have the plastic in there, so they're not attracting the wax moths.
That's really cool. I wonder if those plastic foundations are soy-based. I'm
not sure. It was a study that came out, and I think it was in one of the journals that I was reading, that wax moths are attracted to the plastic and eat the plastic in the hive. Who'd have known?
I'd never thought that.
Yeah.
What's up, Cage?
It goes back to one of my first questions, like back when we first started doing the streams, and I was asking Dennis about, you want to keep all your materials natural as possible, right? As much as you can, as far as everything you build your hives and everything else out of. It just makes sense that they would be happier with that, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
So how much more time do we have
well,
there?
It's pretty cool. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry about that, Kate. How much more time?
We can. How about another 10 minutes?
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were just talking about creating your equipment with natural things, and I just wanted to point out that there actually are polyester. I think that's the name. They have. Okay, we're all familiar with the foam ice box. They actually have bee boxes that are made from that foam.
And they have a firm outer coating that they put on those things so that they're durable, and they're wonderful R value. They keep the warmth in, but they have vents that are put into them that allow the circulation to go in the hive. And allow for the circulation to keep the hive at the appropriate humidity and everything like that. They're really cool. I don't know how they would hold up with a bear or a raccoon,
Not at all.
but they're super awesome.
And what's really intriguing about them, if you're having to pinch pennies, if you're in a situation where you're hard up for cash, let's face it, you can get a double deep setup with the bottom boxes, frames, and well, I'm not sure about the frames, but it has everything else, and it's around $60 or $70. Whereas if you do that with natural wood stuff, you're going to be in it around 100, 120, maybe a little more. But the wood stuff is going to last a lot longer.
Yeah. And
buy once, cry once kind of scenario.
Yeah. One of the things you also learn about bees and styrofoam is when a bee wants to make a bigger area, and this happens in trees as well, they start chewing on it. And they'll chew it away and throw it out of the hive and make a bigger space for themselves. So one of the difficulties with the styrofoam hives that they originally started out with was the bees would start eating at the styrofoam to the point where they were making their own holes in the styrofoam to leave and come from. So it defeated a little bit of it. But then they figured out the spray that they were going to put on there. And so they sprayed it, and it makes it a harder surface. So yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I can't wait to see some of the experiments and stuff that they're doing. I do have nukes, little white nukes that I use, and when I breed my own queen and I throw it in there and I throw in a cup of bees in this little styrofoam nuke, it keeps them so warm and happy, and they just go crazy, right? And those styrofoam nukes are set up so that they have feeders inside the hive already, and they have a queen excluder that makes it so that the bees can't, or the queen can't go into the food and kill herself, because bees love to kill themselves. Anything they can do to kill themselves, they'll do it. So
they do.
And what
absolutely right.
What you have to do inside those feeders is you have to float a piece of burr comb or something in the middle, so that if they do go in the drink, they can crawl over onto that, dry off, and then fly out. But yeah, you do what you can to keep them alive, but they find the damn way to die.
You know, what I do here in Colorado, my boys love watching bees open feed. I have a milk dish. I don't know, it's one of them white dishes. Anyways, that's irrelevant. I have a milk dish that I'll put marbles in, and then over the top of the marbles, I'll put cedar bark, and then I'll saturate that in sugar syrup. And it's so much fun to watch the bees take that syrup, because they will literally take it down to the last drop, and they'll make their way down through the bark and into the marbles. It's so cool to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. And
keeps them drowning, though. That's the important thing.
During the spring, when you're doing that, you'll find bumblebees coming to that. You'll even find the queen wasps coming to that.
Wasps.
And if you sit over there with your bee suit on and your gloves on with your hive tool, queen wasp will come over and go
squish, squish. Yes, sir.
And if you're killing the queens in the
that's
spring,
actually how I control the hornets in my area.
Yeah, if you're killing them in the spring,
I do it every spring.
Babies.
Correct.
Okay. Right on.
But yeah, you can not only feed them sugar water in that type of a method, but you can also put out a plate of flour, and if you want to, you can sprinkle in the flour or some yeast, and they'll come and dive bomb in that, and they'll come visit your yard and dive bomb into that. And one of the ways that you can get bees to start coming to your yard and exploring your yard, and with your nice little swarm catcher there, your box that's going to catch your swarm right beside, and it has a thing. The same bees that go out and explore and find food are the same bees that go and explore to find houses. And so as they get older, they're the ones that are going to go back and tell the old queen, hey, we have some digs we can go to. Come check it out.
Cool.
So that's
a really good question.
And get them to come to your thing there.
Okay, got a good question from chat.
Right.
So my wife is very allergic to bees. Any suggestions if I wanted to start a hive other than just keeping her away? So
absolutely. So what you need to do, Patriotic Poet, first and foremost, your wife knows her allergy. You know her allergy. the smart thing to do if you're interested in keeping bees, first and foremost, is to get an EpiPen. Have it on hand at all times, which if your wife has that severe of an allergy, she likely already has one. Don't let that keep you from keeping bees. Think outside the box. Try to find a farmer or a friend or a family member that you can keep your bees away from where your wife lives. And then see if you can possibly talk her into getting a high quality beekeeping suit that she would not be able to get stung in, and see if she'll keep bees with you. You know, there's many ways to skin the proverbial cat.
Cool.
And there are other things that she can do to make it so that she progressively gets to the point where she is no longer allergic to it. She can be exposed to bee venom in small amounts and get to the point where she is no longer having allergic reactions. However, there is a word of caution here.
What is that called, Dennis?
As a beekeeper, your suit, your gloves, your hood are all going to end up being stung by the bee. And they won't lose their stinger most times when they sting your suit. They'll just poke it in, inject their venom, fly away. And they happen to keep their stinger most times. Your bee suit and your gloves particularly are going to be saturated with bee venom. Do not let her wash your bee suit. Do not. It will cause her to have
Correct.
that reaction even though she wasn't stung. So you're going to be laundering
Absolutely.
your own bee suit, and it's a good thing to take it off before you come home. Put it in a plastic bag, take it right down to your washing machine, put it right in so that she doesn't touch the darn thing at all. And loves and hugs and affection are great things, but out in the bee yard, if she's allergic, she shouldn't be giving you a hug or touching your gloves or your hands or anything. So just a note.
Right. And that's something else to consider is a bee will be viable to sting you 7 days after death, give or take. Just because a bee is dead does not mean that it cannot sting you. I stepped on many bees as a child thinking, I can run around barefoot outside. Well, they'll still sting you. And that's another thing, talking about your beekeeping suits. Just removing your gloves and stuff, if there's a stinger that they did lose, you might inadvertently stick yourself with a stinger that's not even in a bee any longer.
Yeah.
So it's all things to account for. And then to hit the granola side about the beekeeping suits, don't wash it.
Yeah.
Right.
And the other thing is with granolas, learn to beekeep most of the time without gloves, because your gloves will get stung. They keep the scent of the sting, and that will make them pissed off the moment you stick your hand over top. I saw the fat bee man take a glove, stick it over top of the hive, on video, of course, stick it over top of the hive, and the bees were just up and over and munching on that glove. He took it off, put his hand on top of the hive, and nothing. He had a bee or two crawling over top.
It's all pheromones.
So just be aware of that. And the one more thing that you need to remember as a beekeeper when you're coming home, you will always have friends come with you. They get in the cuffs of your legs. They'll crawl up your boot and just hide underneath your pant leg. They'll crawl in the back of your shirt and just stay there. They'll get into your vehicle. Just one bee will be in your vehicle every single time you come home from the bee yard, against the window. Ding, 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 ding. Just know that you're going to be bringing bees home. And that's why I say take off your suit before you get home. Your bee friends, they might show up in your house. If your wife is allergic, that's usually a bad thing.
Absolutely. I unsuit right at my colonies. Go ahead, Cage.
Okay. Yeah, it's been an hour and a half, so we'll call it there. I went a little bit longer tonight so we could have the collaboration. And I'm going to do this again. Of course, Dennis and I are going to be doing this once a week for sure if we can. And Bob, got your email there, so we'll keep in touch too. And the next time we can get on like this, we will. So,
Yes,
Absolutely.
definitely.
Thanks for having me on.
all right. So thanks very much, guys. Thanks everybody in chat, everybody who's watching. And we'll stay backstage for a minute, guys, and chat real quick about this. And
Cool.
thanks everybody. And enjoy beekeeping, folks. All right, good night.
Be happy.